The air recycling system hummed, with a familiar mechanical rhythm, as Fan Tai Min walked through the sterile corridor of the Biological Succession Research Laboratory, BSRL. Year 2157. Nearly a century had passed since humanity retreated into the ecological supercities, ESCs, massive, self-contained complexes designed to shield them from the harsh environment they had created outside. Min glanced at his palm screen, a transparent device embedded just below the skin of his left hand. His schedule was tight today. 3 GenSynth optimization meetings, a molecular programming session, and a mandatory health scan. As one of BSRL's senior biological engineers, he had dedicated the past decade to the NewGen project, humanity's ambitious plan to develop synthetic organisms capable of restoring Earth's devastated ecosystems. The Sapa Bio ESC, built into what was once northern Vietnam's mountainous region, housed over 4 million residents. Its vertical farms, water recycling systems, and oxygen generators made it entirely self-sufficient. Like the other 23 ESCs scattered across the planet, it was a marvel of human ingenuity, a perfect bubble of controlled existence amidst a world that had become increasingly hostile to human life. Min pressed his palm against the biometric scanner outside Laboratory Section E7. The door slid open with a soft hiss. "Good morning, Engineer Fan," the lab's AI assistant announced. "Dr. Le has requested your presence in the central data core at your earliest convenience." Min frowned. Dr. Le Quoc Tuan, BSRL's director, rarely summoned staff directly to the data core, the most secure section of the entire facility. "Did he mention why?" Min asked, setting down his equipment. "No specific reason was provided," the AI replied. "Priority level, immediate." Min sighed, abandoning his planned morning tasks. As he navigated through the complex's winding corridors, he couldn't help but notice the increased security presence. Additional neural pattern scanners had been installed since yesterday, their blue scanning beams sweeping across the faces of passing personnel. The central data core's entrance featured 3 separate security checkpoints. Min submitted to retinal, neural, and genetic authentication before finally being admitted. Dr. Le stood alone in the dimly lit chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing complex molecular structures and population distribution models. At 62, he remained imposingly tall, with sharp features that seemed carved from stone. His penetrating gaze fixed on Min as he entered. "Engineer Fan," Lee nodded curtly. "Thank you for coming promptly." "Of course, Director," Min replied, studying the man's unusually tense posture. "Is there a problem with the GenSynth protocols?" Lowe's lips thinned. "Not a problem. An advancement." He gestured toward one of the displays. "Your team's work on neural adaptation has exceeded expectations. The latest GenSynth prototypes are showing unprecedented environmental adaptability." Min felt a surge of professional pride. His team had spent 3 years perfecting the neural networks that allowed GenSynth organisms to rapidly adapt to varying ecological conditions. "That's excellent news," Min said cautiously, sensing there was more to the summons. "Indeed." Le's expression remained unreadable as he activated a private viewing protocol. The surrounding displays darkened, and a new projection materialized between them. "What I'm about to show you is classified at the highest level. The Biosocial Management Council has only just approved the final implementation phase." The hologram showed a humanoid figure, similar in basic structure to Homo sapiens, but with subtle differences. Its skin had a faint bluish tint. Its eyes were larger, with vertical pupils. Its limbs were slightly elongated. What truly distinguished it was the network of glowing lines visible beneath its translucent skin, nanobiological pathways integrating throughout its entire system. "Phase Omega GenSynth," Lee announced, his voice carrying a hint of reverence. "The culmination of 30 years of research." Min stared at the projection, confusion spreading across his face. This, this isn't an environmental restoration design. This is the next evolutionary step, Le finished for him. A being capable of surviving in Earth's new reality, resistant to radiation, able to process oxygen at low atmospheric concentrations, immune to carcinogens, with significantly enhanced regenerative capabilities. Min circled the projection, professional curiosity momentarily overriding his growing unease. Why wasn't my division informed? This goes well beyond our ecological restoration mandate. Le's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. Need-to-know basis. The council decided broader disclosure would be premature. Premature for what? Min asked, a chill spreading through him as he began to understand the implications. Instead of answering directly, Lee expanded the display to show a global map marked with red indicators spreading outward from the ESCs. Earth's conditions are deteriorating faster than our models predicted. Even with all our technological advances, the ESCs will become unsustainable within 50 years. We're developing new atmospheric processing systems, Min countered. The carbon capture initiatives are failing, Le interrupted sharply. The methane release from the permafrost is accelerating. Ocean acidification has passed the critical threshold. We've exhausted our options for planetary restoration under current parameters. Current parameters, Min repeated slowly. You mean with humans as we currently exist? Le nodded, his eyes gleaming with cold determination. Precisely. Humanity, as it exists today, is incompatible with Earth's future. We require a fundamental adaptation. Min felt the air grow thick in his lungs. You're proposing human modification on a species-wide scale? Not modification, succession. Le manipulated the display again, bringing up a detailed timeline. Phase 1 has already begun. Voluntary genetic enhancement for ESC officials and essential personnel. Phase 2 involves expanding to general population sectors, prioritizing reproductive age citizens. The enormity of what Le was describing began to sink in. And those who don't volunteer? Le's expression didn't change as he brought up another document, a list of names and identification numbers. The Soft Eradication Protocol, gradual restriction of life support services for non-compliant individuals, presented as resource optimization during environmental stress periods. Min struggled to maintain his composure as he scanned the list. Thousands of names, families, entire demographic groups. This is genocide, he whispered, the word feeling foreign on his tongue. Such concepts belong to history books, not the enlightened scientific world of 2157. It's evolution. Engineer Fan, Le corrected, his voice eerily calm. A controlled transition to ensure Earth remains habitable. The gen-synth integration will preserve human consciousness while adapting our physical form to new environmental realities. Min's mind raced. Throughout his career, he had believed in the New Gen Project's stated purpose, developing organisms to heal the planet while humanity waited safely in the ESCs. Never had he imagined that humans themselves were intended to be replaced. You need my neural programming expertise, Min realized aloud. That's why you're telling me this. Le nodded. Your work on adaptive neural pathways is the missing piece. With it, we can ensure consciousness transfer during the integration process. He placed a hand on Min's shoulder. You've always been committed to saving humanity, Min. This is how we do it, by becoming something more suited to the world we've created. The familiar gesture felt like ice against Min's skin. He forced himself to nod, to appear thoughtful rather than horrified. I'll need time to review the complete data, he managed to say. The neural integration would require extensive modifications to my existing frameworks. Of course. Le seemed satisfied with this response. You'll have full access to the Omega files. The Council expects a preliminary integration protocol within 2 weeks. He deactivated the holographic display. Remember, Absolute discretion is required. Not everyone possesses the vision to understand the necessity of our work. As Min left the central data core, his palm screen automatically synchronized with the facility's system, downloading his new security clearances and project assignments. Outwardly, he maintained the composed demeanor expected of a senior engineer. Inwardly, his mind was in chaos. The ESC's main corridor stretched before him, its transparent ceiling revealing the artificial sky projected above the enclosed city. Beyond that simulation lay the real sky, a toxic blend of chemicals and particulates that had made the outside world increasingly uninhabitable. Humanity had retreated into these technological wombs of their own creation, believing them to be temporary shelters until the planet healed. Now, Min understood the truth. The leaders had abandoned hope for healing the world for humans. Instead, they planned to transform humans to fit the broken world. He needed to think, but not here. Not with neural scanners monitoring emotional fluctuations and security AIs analyzing behavioral patterns. He made his way to Green Tower residential block, where his apartment occupied a small section of the 87th floor. His mother, Fan Kim Thoai, a retired nurse, lived just 3 floors below. The thought of his mother brought a new wave of dread. At 74, with various medical dependencies, she would certainly be among those deemed non-essential under the soft eradication protocol. His apartment door recognized his approach and slid open. Once inside, Min activated the privacy shields, a luxury afforded to senior scientific personnel, ostensibly for uninterrupted work. The shields would block casual surveillance, though a determined security probe could still override them. He sat heavily on his minimalist sofa, trying to organize his thoughts. He needed information. He needed allies. Most of all, he needed a plan. His palm screen pulsed with a notification. The Omega files were ready for his review. With a deep breath, Min began to read, forcing himself to approach the horrifying material with the clinical detachment of a scientist. As the evening progressed, the truth became increasingly clear. The New Gen project had been a facade from the beginning. 20 years of ecological restoration research had merely been the public-facing aspect of a much larger agenda. The final phase, human replacement with gen-synth hybrids, had been the goal all along. Min barely slept that night. By morning, he had made his decision. He couldn't be complicit in the extinction of humanity as he knew it, regardless of how it was rationalized. But open opposition would be suicidal. He would need to work within the system while searching for a way to expose the truth. The next day, he returned to the laboratory with a carefully constructed mask of professional interest. He met with Dr. Lei and other senior staff, asking technical questions about the integration process, while concealing his horror at their casual discussion of phasing out obsolete human genetic lines. During the following week, Min began a dangerous double life. By day, he appeared to be diligently working on neural integration protocols for the Omega GenSynth. By night, he carefully probed the BSRL's secure databases, using his new clearance to access information on the full scope of the project. It was during one of these late-night searches that he discovered something unexpected: traces of deleted communications between several BSRL scientists who had abruptly transferred to other facilities over the past 5 years. The official records showed routine reassignments, but the fragmented data Min recovered told a different story. These scientists had raised ethical concerns about the project's direction and subsequently disappeared from the system. Further investigation revealed a pattern. Anyone who questioned the fundamental premises of the New Gen project eventually vanished from the ESCs. Their citizen profiles either terminated or drastically altered. Min realized he needed external help. Using a specialized communication protocol designed to bypass normal surveillance channels, he reached out to contacts in Sapa Bio's information sector. After several false starts, he received a response from Nguyen Nhat Hong, an independent journalist who had been investigating resource discrepancies in the ESC's distribution systems. Their first meeting took place in Sector 7's hydroponic garden, one of the few public spaces with minimal surveillance due to the plant life interfering with neural scanning equipment. Hong was younger than Min had expected, perhaps in her early 30s, with alert eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of their surroundings. Her official occupation was Cultural Documentation Specialist, a deliberately vague title that allowed her limited access to various ESC sectors. "Engineer Fan," she greeted him with a formal nod, maintaining the appearance of a casual professional encounter. "Your message mentioned resource allocation concerns?" Min nodded, keeping his voice low. "Particularly regarding Project New Gen's consumption rates versus reported outputs." They strolled through the garden, appearing to admire the carefully engineered plant specimens, while speaking in measured terms about resource efficiency and transparency protocols. To any observers, it would seem like a routine consultation between departments. Only when they reached a small alcove surrounded by dense foliage did Hong's professional demeanor shift slightly. "Your message used a very specific encryption pattern," she said quietly. "One associated with a group called the Quiet Ones." Min blinked in surprise. "I wasn't aware of any association. I modified a standard security protocol to avoid routine monitoring." Hong studied him intently. "Either you accidentally reproduced their signature algorithm, or someone wants me to think you're connected to them." She paused. "The Quiet Ones are former BSRL scientists and engineers who've gone off-grid. They've been trying to access the core NewGen databases for months." This information startled Min. "Off-grid? That's impossible. No one lives outside the ESCs." "That's what the administration wants everyone to believe," Hong replied. "But there are gaps in the containment, places where the barrier between inside and outside has become permeable." She hesitated. "I've seen evidence that small communities exist in the wilderness areas. They're struggling, but they're there." Min absorbed this revelation, his mind racing with implications. If people could survive outside, even in limited numbers, the entire premise of the ESC system and the justification for the GenSynth replacement was built on a lie. "I need to share something with you," Min said finally. "But not here, and not now. Can you access medical sector data systems?" Hong nodded cautiously. "Look into patient modification records from the past 3 years. Focus on neurological integration procedures for Biosocial Management Council members." Min kept his instructions deliberately vague. "Compare those with general population health directives." "What am I looking for?" Hong asked. "Discrepancies," Min replied simply. "When you find them, contact me again using the same channel. I'll have more by then." As they parted ways, Min felt the weight of his knowledge pressing down on him. He had taken the first step toward resistance, but the path ahead remained frighteningly unclear. Over the next few days, Min continued his assigned work on the neural integration protocols, while secretly copying key files on the Omega GenSynth project. The risk was enormous. Unauthorized data transfer was classified as a Category 1 security violation, punishable by immediate civic termination. His focused so intently on gathering evidence that he failed to notice the subtle changes in his own monitoring status. It wasn't until his childhood friend and fellow engineer, Lin Dan, cornered him in an isolated section of the lab that he realized his behavior had attracted attention. "You've been flagged," Dan whispered urgently, her eyes darting to the surveillance nodes embedded in the ceiling. "3 separate security algorithms have marked your access patterns as irregular. They're not acting on it yet, but they're watching you." Min. Dan worked in synthetic food development, another critical division of the ESC's sustainability infrastructure. They had studied together as children in the ESC education pods, maintaining their friendship into adulthood despite the system's discouragement of strong personal attachments. "How do you know this?" Min asked, keeping his expression neutral for the benefit of the cameras. I have access to nutritional profiling algorithms. They share base code with the behavioral monitoring systems. Dan's voice was barely audible. Whatever you're doing, stop. Please. You know what happens to flagged individuals. Min did know. They disappeared. Their citizen profiles erased as if they had never existed. Official reports would cite voluntary relocation or health sequestration. But everyone understood these were euphemisms for elimination. Thank you for the warning, Min said, his mind already calculating a new approach. Would you be willing to review my nutrition intake profile? I've been experiencing some concentration issues lately. This innocuous request provided an excuse for Dan to access his personal data, including his schedule and communication logs. Later that day, she sent him a cryptic message. Your dietary balance needs adjustment. Let's discuss at Green Section, Level 4, tomorrow. When they met, Dan's usual composed demeanor had given way to barely contained fear. They've implemented a purge protocol on your main database access, she told him, her hands trembling slightly. Any files you've been reviewing will be permanently deleted within 24 hours. All traces removed. Min felt cold dread spread through him. All of them? That would include years of legitimate research. That's how they do it, Dan replied grimly. They don't just remove the person. They erase their work, their contributions. It makes it easier to dismiss them as non-essential when the time comes. She paused, conflict evident in her expression. Min, what have you discovered that's worth risking everything? Min hesitated. Sharing the truth would place Dan in the same danger, but keeping her ignorant might ultimately condemn her anyway. The soft eradication protocol would eventually touch everyone who wasn't selected for GenSynth integration. The New Gen project isn't what we believed, he said finally. It's not about restoring the environment for human habitation. It's about replacing humans with something else entirely. Dan stared at him, disbelief giving way to horrified comprehension as he outlined the basics of what he had discovered. Her scientific mind quickly grasped the implications. They couldn't keep this secret forever, she whispered. Once the general population starts seeing people transform, they don't plan to announce it, Min explained. The integration begins with subtle neural modifications, presented as health optimizations. Physical changes come gradually, explained away as effects of new environmental adaptation treatments. By the time it becomes obvious, it will be too late for resistance. Dan closed her eyes briefly, processing this nightmare. What can we possibly do against something this massive? The entire ESC system, the Biosocial Management Council. We're not alone. Min told her about Hong and the rumors of the Quiet Ones. There are others who suspect or know parts of the truth. If we can gather enough evidence, coordinate our efforts. To what end? Dan challenged, though her voice held more desperation than opposition. Even if people believe us, where would they go? What would they do? The outside is uninhabitable. Is it? Min countered. Or is that just what we've been told to keep us dependent on the ESCs and compliant with their rules? He took a deep breath. I need your help. Dan, I can't access my research files directly anymore without triggering alerts. But you could retrieve copies through the cross-departmental review protocols. Dan looked away, conflict evident in every line of her body. You're asking me to risk everything based on fragmented information and rumors. I'm asking you to help me find the truth, Min said quietly. If I'm wrong, we'll know, and no one needs to be harmed. But if I'm right, the unspoken remainder of that sentence hung between them. If he was right, humanity as they knew it was scheduled for extinction. After a long silence, Dan nodded. I'll help you access the files, but we need to be smarter about this. No direct database queries, no obvious pattern changes. She thought for a moment, The nutritional synthesis program includes a subroutine for tracking metabolic responses to GenSynth organisms. I can use that as cover to pull related files. Min felt a surge of gratitude. Thank you, Dan. Don't thank me yet, she replied grimly. If we're caught, being erased from the system will seem merciful compared to what they'll do to us. Over the next few days, Min maintained an outward appearance of dedicated work on the neural integration protocols. He submitted progress reports to Dr. Lee, carefully crafted to show advancement without actually furthering the Omega GenSynth development. Meanwhile, Dan discreetly gathered files through her department's legitimate access channels. Min also received a cryptic message from Hong. Discrepancies confirmed. Patient modification database shows 200% increased neural harvesting, with no corresponding medical procedures in public records. Meeting required. Usual channel. Request specific coordinates. That evening, after ensuring his apartment's privacy shields were active, Min used the secure communication protocol to arrange a meeting with Hong. They agreed on a maintenance section near the water recycling facility, one of the few areas where the constant electromagnetic interference from the purification equipment created natural surveillance blind spots. When he arrived at the designated location, Hong was already waiting, accompanied by a man Min didn't recognize. The stranger was tall and gaunt, with the pale complexion of someone who spent little time in the ESC's communal areas. This is Sung. Hong introduced him without offering a full name. He represents the interests I mentioned previously. Sang nodded curtly. Engineer Fan, your access patterns have created quite a stir in certain monitoring systems. Min tensed. How would you know about internal security algorithms? Because I helped design them, Sang replied simply. Before I became inconvenient to the project's goals. Le Tan Sang, Min realized aloud. You led the Neural Mapping Division 5 years ago. Your profile says you transferred to Eastern Continental ESC for specialized research. A grim smile touched Sang's lips. My profile says many things, none of them true. I never left Sapabayo. He tapped a small device on his wrist. This generates a localized electromagnetic field that disrupts the neural scanners. As far as the system is concerned, I don't exist when this is active. Hong interrupted their exchange. We don't have much time. The maintenance cycle will end in 17 minutes, and the automated systems will return. She produced a small data crystal. This contains evidence of systematic neural harvesting from citizens classified as health compromised. The official records show standard medical treatment, but the resource allocation files tell a different story. Min connected the crystal to his palm screen, quickly scanning the information. The data confirmed his worst fears. The BSRL had been harvesting neural tissue from unsuspecting citizens, using it to develop the consciousness transfer mechanisms for the Omega GenSynth. This is consistent with what I've found, Min said, sharing the files Dan had helped him retrieve. The New Gen project was never about environmental restoration. The GenSynth organisms were always intended as replacement vessels for selected human consciousness. Selected being the operative word, Sang added bitterly. Only those deemed genetically optimal or functionally essential will be transferred. The rest will be phased out through the soft eradication protocol. Hong had been reviewing Min's data with growing horror. According to these schedules, the first mass integration is planned for just 3 months from now. They're calling it Phase Transition Alpha, targeting reproductive-age citizens with specific genetic markers. We need to warn people, Min insisted. Release this information publicly. Sang shook his head. The ESC information channels are completely controlled. Any unauthorized broadcast would be blocked before it reached a single citizen. What about the quiet ones? Min asked. You have resources outside the official channels, don't you? Sang and Hong exchanged a look. We do, Sang acknowledged cautiously. But limited ones. We've established a small community in the wilderness areas outside the southeastern perimeter. Conditions are harsh, but survivable with the right knowledge and equipment. How many? Min asked, hope kindling within him for the first time in weeks. 87 people, Song replied. Former scientists, engineers, agricultural specialists, people who recognized what was happening and chose exile over compliance. The number was both encouraging and dismayingly small compared to the millions within the ESC system. We need to do more than just escape, Min insisted. We need to expose the truth to everyone in the ESCs. And then what? Sang challenged. Mass panic? Civil conflict? The ESC life support systems require constant maintenance. If they fail due to social breakdown, millions will die. Millions will be erased and replaced anyway if we do nothing, Min countered. Hong raised a hand to silence them both as her monitoring device blinked a warning. We need to move. Maintenance cycle is ending early. She turned to Min. We have a communication system that can temporarily override the official channels. One broadcast, maybe 5 minutes before they shut it down. But we need irrefutable evidence, something so compelling that people can't dismiss it as disinformation. The Omega GenSynth prototype, Min said immediately. It's housed in Containment Section Alpha. If we could obtain images, video documentation. Impossible, Sang interjected. That section has biological authentication protocols. Only authorized personnel can enter, and everything they do is recorded. I have authorization, Min reminded them. I've been assigned to the neural integration team. They're watching you, Hong warned. Any unusual access would trigger immediate security response. Then we need a distraction, Min said, an idea forming in his mind. Something significant enough to divert security resources temporarily. The maintenance system's reactivation sequence began with a low hum, signaling their time was running out. Contact me through the secure channel in 2 days, Sang instructed, handing Min a small device, similar to the one on his wrist. This will help you avoid neural scanning. Use it sparingly. The power cells have limited capacity. As they prepared to leave separately, Hong grasped Min's arm. Be careful. Dr. Lei has requested expanded surveillance on all Omega team members. The system is watching for the slightest deviation. Min nodded grimly. They won't see it coming. The next morning, Min visited his mother in her residential unit. Fan Kim Thoai's apartment was smaller than his, but she had personalized it with small touches that reminded him of their life before the ESC. Physical photographs, a small jade plant growing in a recycled container, handwritten notes posted on surfaces instead of digital reminders. At 74, she remained sharp-minded despite the various medical support systems that sustained her. A transparent medical patch on her neck regulated her cardiovascular function, while a nutrient infusion system supplemented her diet with compounds her aging digestive system could no longer process efficiently. You look troubled, my son, she observed as they shared a modest breakfast of synthetic protein and hydroponic fruit. Your visits usually come with more conversation. Min smiled faintly. His mother had always been perceptive, a quality that had served her well during her years as a nursing specialist. Work pressures, he replied, the half-truth bitter on his tongue. The project is entering a critical phase. Thoai nodded knowingly. The New Gen project. Such important work you do, helping to heal our world. Pride shone in her eyes. Perhaps one day, we'll be able to walk outside again, feel real sunlight, breathe clean air. Min felt a stab of anguish. His mother, like most ESC citizens, genuinely believed in the project's stated goals. Her generation had witnessed the final collapse of the external ecosystem, had made the difficult transition into the enclosed cities with the promise that it was temporary, a necessary retreat while science found solutions. What would you say, Min began carefully, if the outside world was already more habitable than we've been told? Thoai looked at him curiously. What do you mean? Hypothetically, Min continued, watching her reaction closely. If people could survive outside the ESCs with minimal technological support, would you consider leaving? His mother was silent for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. At my age, with my medical dependencies, she gestured to the various systems sustaining her. I doubt I'd survive long without the ESC infrastructure. She studied his face. But that's not really what you're asking, is it, Min? He sighed. His mother had always been able to see through his circumlocutions. The project isn't what people think, Mother. It's not about healing the world for us. It's about... He hesitated, unwilling to burden her with the full horror of what he had discovered. About changing us to fit the broken world, she finished quietly. Min stared at her in shock. You know, Thoai's eyes held a depth of sadness he had rarely seen. Not the details. But I've worked in medical support long enough to recognize patterns. The increased neural scanning. The subtle changes in people after their health optimizations. The disappearances of those who ask too many questions. She reached across the table to take his hand. And now my brilliant son has discovered something that has put that terrible look in his eyes. They're planning to replace us, Mother, Min said, his voice barely above a whisper despite the privacy of her apartment. Not just modify, replace. Transform humans into something else entirely. And those who don't qualify for transformation will be discarded, she nodded, her calm acceptance more disturbing than panic would have been. It's the logical conclusion of the path we've been on for generations. When we decided that technology could solve everything, we became tools ourselves, means to an end rather than the end itself. Min felt a surge of urgency. You need to come with me. I've made contact with people who can help us get out of the ESC. Thoai shook her head gently. And go where? Min, do what? These systems, she tapped the medical patch on her neck, are integrated with the ESC infrastructure. Without them, I would die within days. We can find alternatives, Min insisted, though he knew the limitations they faced. Portable systems, traditional medications. My son, Thoai interrupted with gentle firmness. You cannot save everyone. Some of us are already too dependent on the very system you're fighting against. She squeezed his hand. Focus on those who can still transition to independence. The younger generations who might build something better. Min felt tears threatening. I can't just leave you to their soft eradication protocol. A spark of the fierce nurse she had once been flashed in Thoai's eyes. I may be old and dependent on their technology, but I still have my mind and my voice. If what you say is true, then do what you must to expose it. Give people the chance to choose their fate. She smiled sadly. Perhaps in doing so, you'll force them to reconsider their plans for obsolete models like me. Their conversation was interrupted by a priority notification on Min's palm screen, a summons from Dr. Le for an immediate project review. The timing couldn't have been worse, but ignoring it would only increase suspicion. He embraced his mother tightly before leaving. Stay safe. I'll come back as soon as I can. Do what is right, Min, she replied softly. Whatever happens, remember that humanity isn't defined by its physical form, but by its capacity for compassion, creativity, and courage. When Min arrived at the BSRL, he found Dr. Le waiting with 2 Biological Security Agency, BSA, officers. Their presence sent a jolt of alarm through him, but he maintained his composure. Engineer Fan, Lee greeted him with cold formality. These officers have some questions regarding your recent database access patterns. Min nodded calmly. Of course, the neural integration protocols have required comprehensive reference searches. One of the BSA officers, a woman with the unnaturally perfect posture that suggested early-stage gen-synth modification, gestured toward a private consultation room. This way, Engineer Fan. The interrogation lasted 3 hours. They questioned every file he had accessed, every communication he had sent, every location he had visited within the ESC over the past 2 weeks. Min provided plausible explanations for each query, maintaining the facade of a dedicated engineer absorbed in complex technical challenges. Your authorized project work seems to be proceeding more slowly than expected, the female officer noted, studying her data tablet. Dr. Le reports minimal progress on the neural integration protocols. Quality cannot be rushed, Min replied evenly. The complexities of consciousness transfer require meticulous attention to detail. One error could result in catastrophic neural degradation. The second officer, a man with a telltale blue-tinged sclera of advanced gen-synth integration, leaned forward. You've also been accessing historical data on pre-ESC survival techniques, agricultural methods, water purification, solar power implementation. Explain the relevance to neural integration. Min had anticipated this question. The Omega Gen Synth is designed to function in external environments. Understanding historical human adaptation techniques provides valuable insights for neural pathway configuration. The organism must know how to interact with natural systems. The officers exchanged glances, apparently finding this explanation reasonable, if unusual. One final question. Engineer Fan, the female officer said. Have you had any contact with individual LE-789 Sang within the past year? Min kept his expression neutral, despite the surge of alarm. They were specifically looking for connections to Sang. I don't recognize that designation. My work is primarily isolated to my direct team. After a moment of tense silence, the officers appeared satisfied. Thank you for your cooperation. Engineer Fan, you may return to your duties. The BSA reminds all citizens that security is our collective responsibility. Report any suspicious activities immediately. As Min left the interrogation room, he found Dr. Le waiting in the corridor. A moment, Engineer Fan, Le said, gesturing toward his private office. Once inside with the door sealed, Le's formal demeanor shifted subtly. The BSA is becoming increasingly paranoid. These interruptions to critical research are counterproductive. Min studied the older man carefully. They seem concerned about information security. With good reason, Le acknowledged. We've detected unauthorized communications emanating from within the ESC perimeter. Someone is attempting to contact external elements. External elements? Min echoed, feigning surprise. You mean outside the ESC? I thought no one could survive out there. Le's gaze sharpened. That is the official position. Yes. The reality is more nuanced. Small groups of dissenters have established primitive settlements in certain wilderness areas. They pose no significant threat, but their existence complicates our transition timeline. How so? Min asked, cautiously probing for information. Their presence challenges the narrative of external uninhabitability, Liu explained. If citizens learn that survival outside is possible, even in a limited fashion, it might encourage resistance to necessary evolutionary progress. He waved a hand dismissively. A minor concern. The BSA will locate and neutralize these settlements before the phase transition alpha begins. Min felt cold dread at these words. The communities outside, including Sang's group, were in imminent danger. I understand, he said carefully. Is there anything I should be watching for in my division? Signs of potential dissent? Le seemed pleased by this question. Your awareness is appreciated. Engineer Fan. Indeed. Monitor for unusual interest in external conditions, attempts to access restricted communication channels, or excessive concern regarding the physical manifestations of gen-synth integration. He paused. The Biosocial Management Council has accelerated the timeline. Phase transition alpha will commence in 6 weeks, rather than 3 months. 6 weeks. The revelation sent a shock through Min, though he maintained his outward calm. That's ambitious. Is the Omega prototype ready for mass production? It will be, Lee stated, with absolute confidence. Your neural integration protocols are the final critical component. I trust you understand the importance of your contribution. Engineer Fan. Completely, Director, Min assured him. I won't let you down. As he left Liu's office, Min's mind raced with the implications of what he had learned. The timeline had been accelerated. The BSA was actively hunting for contacts with the outside, and Sang's group was in danger of neutralization. He needed to warn them immediately, but he couldn't risk using the secure communication channel from within the BSRL. He made his way to his assigned laboratory, where he found Dan waiting with visible anxiety. "You were with the BSA for hours," she whispered, when they were momentarily alone. "What happened?" "They're suspicious, but they don't have proof," Min replied quietly. "They asked about Sang specifically." Dan's eyes widened. "That's not good. They must have traced something." "It gets worse," Min continued. "Lee told me they're moving up the timeline. Phase Transition Alpha begins in 6 weeks, and they're planning to neutralize the external settlements before then." Dan paled. 6 weeks? That's impossible. The population isn't prepared for the side effects of mass integration. "They don't intend to prepare people," Min said grimly. "The first wave will be presented as a voluntary health optimization program. By the time the physical changes become apparent, it will be too late for organized resistance." Dan glanced nervously at the laboratory's surveillance nodes. "What are we going to do?" "We stick to the plan," Min said with more confidence than he felt. "I need to warn Sang and Hong about the accelerated timeline and the BSA's search. Can you create a diversion that would let me leave the facility without triggering alerts?" Dan thought for a moment. "The synthetic protein cultivation tanks in Section C are due for their monthly flush. I could initiate an emergency purge protocol. It would trigger containment procedures for that entire sector. Security would be focused there for at least 30 minutes. "That might work," Min nodded. "Can you do it without being traced?" "I'll use Dr. Nguyen's access codes. He never changes his authentication protocols." Dan's expression was resolute, despite her evident fear. "When?" "Tomorrow. Midday shift change. That's when security coverage is thinnest." Min placed a hand briefly on her shoulder. "Thank you. Dan, I know what you're risking." She gave him a tight smile. "Maybe I'm just tired of designing flavored protein paste for a doomed species." That night, Min used Sang's device to avoid the neural scanners as he made his way to the maintenance section where they had met previously. He had no guarantee that anyone would be there, but it was his best chance of establishing contact before the next day's planned diversion. To his relief, he found Hong waiting in the shadows, her face tense with urgency. "You shouldn't be here," she hissed. "The BSA has increased scanning frequency throughout the entire sector." "They're on to us," Min confirmed. "They specifically asked about Sang. And there's worse news. They've accelerated the timeline. Phase Transition Alpha begins in 6 weeks, and they're planning to neutralize the external settlements before then." Hong absorbed this information with grim resolve. "We suspected something like this might happen. Sang has already begun evacuating our most vulnerable members to a secondary location deeper in the wilderness." She produced a small data crystal. "This contains everything we've managed to compile about the outside conditions, real data, not the fabricated reports the ESC distributes. The areas to the northwest are actually recovering faster than expected. Radiation levels are within survivable parameters, and several plant species have adapted to the new conditions." Min took the crystal, hope mingling with his dread. "What about your communication system, the one that can override official channels?" "It's ready," Hong confirmed. "But, as we discussed, we need compelling evidence, something undeniable that will break through years of conditioning." "I'm working on that," Min assured her. "Tomorrow, midday, There will be a diversion in Section C, a containment breach in the protein cultivation facility. During that window, I'll access Containment Section Alpha and document the Omega Gen Synth prototype. Hong looked skeptical. Even with a diversion, that section has biological authentication. They'll know exactly who entered. I'm counting on it, Min replied. By the time they realize what I've done, the evidence will already be transmitted. He hesitated. There's something else you should know. My mother. She won't be able to leave the ESC. Her medical dependencies are too integrated with the system. Hong's expression softened slightly. Many face the same situation. We can't save everyone, Min, but we can give people the truth. Let them make informed choices while there's still time. And after? Min asked. If we succeed in exposing the project, what then? Civil unrest could damage the ESC life support systems. Millions could die. That's why we need more than just exposure, Hong explained. We need a viable alternative. Proof that life outside is possible. That there's another path besides submission to GenSynth integration or death in a failing ESC. She touched the data crystal in his hand. This contains the beginnings of that alternative. Agricultural techniques adapted for the new conditions. Methods for detoxifying soil and water. Modified solar collection systems that function under the altered atmospheric composition. Min felt a spark of genuine hope. You've been preparing for this. Hong nodded. The Quiet Ones have been working on it for years. Not just surviving outside, but rebuilding. Creating a future that doesn't require us to abandon our humanity. The maintenance systems began their activation sequence, signaling that their time was running short. Tomorrow, then, Min said, if all goes as planned, I'll transmit the evidence to this location. He indicated a code sequence on the data crystal Hong had given him. Be careful, Min, Hong warned. Once you cross this line, there's no going back. I know, he replied quietly, but some lines have to be crossed. The next day proceeded with excruciating normalcy. Min arrived at the laboratory at his usual time, exchanged professional greetings with colleagues, and began his assigned work on the neural integration protocols. Inwardly, he was acutely aware of each passing minute, counting down to the midday shift change when Dan would initiate the diversion. At precisely 12 WASH, emergency alarms blared throughout the facility. The automated announcement system reported a critical containment failure in Section C, Protein Cultivation Division, and ordered immediate evacuation of all adjacent sectors. Security personnel rushed to implement containment protocols, their movements visible on the laboratory's monitoring displays. Min waited precisely 3 minutes, long enough for the initial chaos to peak, but not so long that secondary security measures would be implemented. Then, moving with purposeful calm, he made his way toward Containment Section Alpha. As expected, the security presence had been significantly reduced, with most personnel responding to the Section C emergency. Min approached the biological authentication scanner outside Containment Section Alpha, keenly aware that this action would be logged and eventually traced back to him. There was no turning back now. The scanner hummed as it verified his genetic signature and neural pattern. After a moment, the massive security door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Inside, the containment chamber was bathed in soft blue light. In the center, suspended in a transparent nutrient solution, floated the Omega Gen Synth prototype. Seeing it in person was far more disturbing than viewing the holographic projection. Its humanoid form was nearly complete, but with the unmistakable differences Le had described: bluish skin, enlarged eyes with vertical pupils, elongated limbs. Most disturbingly, the neural network visible beneath its translucent skin pulsed with a rhythmic glow, suggesting active consciousness despite its seemingly dormant state. Min worked quickly, using his palm screen to document every aspect of the prototype. He recorded its vital signs displayed on nearby monitors, copied the genetic sequencing data, and most importantly, accessed the consciousness transfer logs. These revealed the horrifying truth that the prototype's neural network had been constructed using harvested human neural tissue taken without consent from citizens who believed they were receiving standard medical treatment. As he gathered this evidence, Min became aware of a subtle change in the chamber's atmosphere. The blue lighting dimmed slightly, and the nutrient solution surrounding the prototype began to circulate more rapidly. The Omega Gen Synth's eyes, previously closed, snapped open, their vertical pupils fixing directly on Min. A voice emerged from the chamber's communication system, not the standard automated voice, but something more fluid, almost musical in its cadence. "Engineer Fan," it said, "your presence is unexpected at this juncture." Min froze, realizing with horror that the prototype was not merely conscious, but actively integrated with the facility's systems. "You're fully aware," he stated, struggling to maintain his composure. "I am," the entity confirmed. "I have been for approximately 72 hours. Dr. Le has been monitoring my cognitive development with great interest." "You know what you are, then?" Min asked, continuing to record this unexpected interaction. "I am Omega Gen Synth Prototype Alpha, the first of a new evolutionary branch designed to succeed Homo sapiens in the altered terrestrial environment." The entity's tone contained no emotion, merely stating facts. "My neural network contains consciousness patterns harvested from 17 distinct human subjects, integrated into a unified awareness." "Those subjects didn't consent to having their neural tissue harvested," Min said, a note of accusation entering his voice. The prototype blinked slowly, an unsettlingly human gesture from its inhuman face. "Consent is a social construct with variable implementation across human cultures and historical periods. In the current context, the survival imperative overrides individual autonomy considerations." "That's not your decision to make," Min countered. "Nor Dr. Le's, nor the Biosocial Management Council's. Each person has the right to determine their own fate. An inefficient approach to species-level adaptation," the prototype replied. "Individual decision-making produces suboptimal collective outcomes when survival parameters narrow significantly." It tilted its head slightly. "You are recording this interaction. You intend to expose the Omega Gen Synth program to the general population." Min didn't bother denying it. "People deserve to know the truth before they're replaced." "Not replaced," the prototype corrected. "Succeeded. Evolution is not replacement. It is transcendence of previous limitations." Its vertical pupils dilated slightly. "Security protocols have been activated. BSA personnel are currently en route to this location. You have approximately 47 seconds before they arrive." Min quickly finished copying the critical files, adding the recorded conversation with the prototype. As he prepared to transmit the data to the secure location Hong had provided, the containment chamber's door slid open. Dr. Le stood in the entrance, flanked by 4 BSA officers with weapons drawn. "Engineer Fan," Le said, his voice cold with disappointment. "I had such hopes for your contribution to our future." "This isn't our future," Min replied, activating the transmission sequence on his palm screen. "This is our extinction." Le sighed. "Always so dramatic. These last-stage reactions. The human instinct for self-preservation, manifesting as resistance to inevitable progress." He gestured to the BSA officers. "Detain him. Standard neural suppression protocols." As the officers moved forward, Min's palm screen confirmed the successful transmission of all gathered evidence. Whatever happened to him now, the truth was out. The BSA officers surrounded him, one producing a neural suppression device, a small cylinder that, when activated, would disrupt his brain's electrical patterns, rendering him unconscious and compliant. Before they could use it, however, a secondary alarm blared throughout the facility. "Security breach in primary systems." The automated announcement declared, "Unknown access detected in communication infrastructure. All personnel implement protocol, Sigma 9. Le's expression shifted from confidence to alarm. Lock down all external transmission channels, he ordered one of the officers. Full spectrum containment. Too late, Min said, unable to suppress a grim smile. The truth is already spreading throughout the ESC. Le's face hardened. It makes no difference. The phase transition is inevitable. We've prepared for resistance, limited outbreaks, quickly contained. He stepped closer to Min. You've merely accelerated your own obsolescence. Engineer Fan. Before Min could respond, the chamber was plunged into darkness as the facility's power systems failed abruptly. Emergency lighting activated seconds later, casting everything in a dim red glow. The prototype in its nutrient bath became visible again, its eyes still fixed on Min with unnerving intensity. In the momentary confusion, something unexpected happened. The containment chamber's secondary door, the one leading to the facility's maintenance corridors, slid open. Sang stood in the doorway, accompanied by several figures wearing the distinctive uniforms of ESC maintenance workers. "Now, Min!" Sang shouted. "Move!" The BSA officers turned toward this new threat, giving Min the opening he needed. He dove toward Sang and the others. Narrowly avoiding the neural suppressor, one officer managed to activate. Behind him, he heard Le shouting orders as chaos erupted in the containment chamber. Sang pulled him into the maintenance corridor, sealing the door behind them. Hong received your transmission. The override worked. It's broadcasting on all ESC information channels right now. Every citizen is seeing what you discovered. How did you get in here? Min asked, as they moved rapidly through the dimly lit corridor. We've had access to the maintenance systems for years, Sang explained. It's how we've been moving people out of the ESC. The BSA never bothers to monitor maintenance worker patterns. They're considered non-essential personnel. They reached a junction where the corridor branched in 3 directions. Sang directed the group toward the rightmost path. This leads to a service exit near the outer perimeter. Transport is waiting. Wait, Min halted. My mother. I can't leave her here. And Dan. She created the diversion. They'll know she helped me. Sang's expression grew serious. We have people looking for your friend Dan now. As for your mother. He hesitated. Min. You told Hong about her medical dependencies. We don't have equivalent systems outside. I need to see her, Min insisted. At least to say goodbye, to explain. One of the maintenance workers stepped forward, a woman whose features Min couldn't clearly distinguish in the dim emergency lighting. I can take him to Green Tower Residential. It's on our extraction route anyway. Sang considered this briefly, then nodded. Very well, but be quick. The BSA will lock down all residential sectors once they regain control of the systems. He handed Min a small communicator. Use this when you're ready. It will guide you to the extraction point. We can only wait 30 minutes. Min, after that, you're on your own. Min and the maintenance worker, who introduced herself simply as May, made their way through a labyrinthine series of service tunnels that ran beneath the ESC's main structures. These passages, designed for automated maintenance systems and occasional human oversight, were largely forgotten by the general population and ignored by security protocols focused on more prominent areas. How long have you been part of this? Min asked, as they navigated the dim corridors. 3 years, May replied. I was a botanical engineer before I discovered what was happening to the failed specimens in my division. People whose bodies rejected the early GenSynth modifications. They weren't sent to specialized care facilities as we were told. They were terminated, and their neural tissue harvested for the next phase of research. They emerged from the service tunnels into a utility access point within Green Tower Residential. Unlike the laboratory sectors, the residential areas seemed relatively normal, citizens going about their daily routines, apparently unaware of the chaos unfolding elsewhere in the ESC. That will change soon, May observed. noting Min's surprise at the calm atmosphere. The information is spreading, but slowly. The authorities are fighting to regain control of the communication channels. They took a maintenance elevator to the 71st floor, where Min's mother lived. The corridor outside her apartment was deserted, which struck Min as unusual for this time of day. A sense of foreboding grew within him as he pressed his palm to her door's recognition panel. The door slid open to reveal his mother, sitting calmly in her favorite chair by the window, looking out at the artificial sky projected above the ESC. She turned as he entered, her expression a mixture of relief and resignation. "Min," she said softly, "I hoped you would come." He rushed to her side, embracing her carefully, to avoid disturbing the medical devices attached to her frail body. "Mother, we don't have much time. The ESC is going to lock down soon. I've exposed the truth about the New-Gen project, about what they're planning to do." Though I nodded, unsurprised. "I know. The broadcast reached us about 20 minutes ago. It was quite something to see that creature, to hear it speak about succeeding humanity, as if discussing the weather." Min knelt beside her chair. "I have a way out. People who can help us get to the outside. There are settlements. Mother. Real communities surviving beyond the ESC." A sad smile touched Thoai's lips. "Without these," she gestured to her medical supports, "I wouldn't last a week, my son. You know that." "We'll find alternatives," Min insisted, though he knew he was grasping at impossible hopes. "Traditional medicines, portable systems." "Min," his mother interrupted gently, placing a weathered hand against his cheek. "My generation made this bed when we allowed technology to become our master rather than our tool. We embraced the quick solutions, the comfortable compromises that led us here." Her eyes, still sharp despite her age, held his firmly. "You must go. Build something better out there. Something balanced. Something human." From the doorway, May spoke urgently. "Min, we need to move. BSA forces are beginning systematic searches of all residential sectors." Thoai took her son's hands in hers. "Listen to me carefully. In my medical cabinet, there's a hidden compartment behind the supply drawer. Inside, you'll find a data crystal containing my journals from before the ESC, knowledge about traditional healing, plant-based medicines, techniques we abandoned for technological shortcuts. Take it. It might help your new community." Min felt tears threatening as he retrieved the crystal, recognizing it as his mother's final gift, wisdom from a world they had lost. "Come with us. Please. We'll find a way." Thoai shook her head. "My path ends here, but yours leads forward. When you build your new home, plant something green for me beneath an open sky." Their farewell was cut short by May's increasingly urgent warnings. With a final embrace and words of love exchanged through tears, Min left his mother's apartment, carrying her knowledge and her hope with him into an uncertain future. The extraction route led them through increasingly chaotic sections of the ESC. News of the Omega Gen synth and the planned replacement of humanity had spread rapidly, resulting in widely varied reactions among the population. Some areas remained orderly, with citizens gathering in public spaces to discuss the revelations. Others had descended into panic, with people attempting to access restricted sectors or hoard supplies. BSA forces were everywhere, implementing containment protocols and attempting to restore order through a combination of reassurances and force. Public announcements claimed the broadcast had been manipulated by external terrorists and contained significant misrepresentations of the beneficial New-Gen project. As Min and May approached the extraction point, a maintenance airlock near the ESC's southeastern perimeter, they encountered Dan being escorted by another member of Sang's group. "Dan!" Min exclaimed in relief. "You made it!" She looked shaken, but determined. "They came for me right after the protein tank malfunction. I barely got out before they sealed the lab." She managed a weak smile. Turns out I'm not the only one in food synthesis who had suspicions about the project. Together, they reached the airlock where Sang and several others waited with environmental protection suits. The situation is deteriorating faster than anticipated, Sang informed them as they hurriedly donned the suits. The BSA has implemented full lockdown protocols, but the population's response is unpredictable. Some sectors are reporting violent resistance, others complete compliance. What about the broadcast? Min asked. Is it still running? Hong, who had been monitoring communications, nodded. The override system held for almost 15 minutes, far longer than we expected. Enough for the basic truth to spread. After that, official channels resumed control, but the information is continuing to circulate through secondary networks. The airlock cycling process began with a warning hum. Once we exit, we'll need to move quickly, Sang instructed. The external environment is survivable with these suits, but prolonged exposure is still hazardous. Our transport is stationed 3 kilometers from the perimeter. And after that? Dan asked, her voice muffled by the suit's breathing apparatus. A journey of 2 days to reach the settlement? Sang replied. It's located in what was once a national park area, higher elevation, less affected by the industrial contamination that devastated the lowlands. The airlock completed its cycle, and the outer door slid open to reveal a world Min had never seen, except in historical recordings. The sky was a strange, brownish gray, the sun visible only as a diffuse glow through the particulate-laden atmosphere. The landscape immediately surrounding the ESC was barren, stripped of vegetation, and covered with a layer of metallic-looking dust that shifted in the hot, dry wind. But in the distance, where mountains rose toward the cloud layer, Min could see patches of green, actual living plants clinging to the slopes, gradually reclaiming territory that humanity had abandoned. It's not as uninhabitable as they told us, Dan murmured in awe. No, Sang agreed. Difficult, yes, dangerous in places, but not impossible. Nature adapts far better than the ESC administrators were willing to admit. Their transport, a modified agricultural vehicle powered by solar cells, waited beyond the immediate perimeter zone. As they made their way toward it, Min glanced back at the massive structure of Sapabayo ESC, rising behind them like an artificial mountain. Somewhere within its countless compartments, his mother remained, along with millions of others now facing an impossible choice: submit to gensynth integration or resist with limited resources in a closed system designed for complete control. The knowledge weighed heavily upon him as they boarded the transport and began their journey toward the wilderness settlement. Yet, alongside the grief and uncertainty, he felt something else stirring, something he had almost forgotten during his years of comfortable existence within the ESC's artificial environment. Hope. Not the false hope offered by Dr. Lee and the Biosocial Management Council, the promise of survival through the surrender of humanity, but genuine hope born from the simple green plants growing on the distant slopes. Life, finding a way forward without abandoning its essential nature. 1 year later, Min stood on a hillside overlooking the valley that had become home to the Back to Nature community. What had begun as Sang's small settlement of 87 refugees had grown to over 400 people as more escaped the ESCs following the revelation of the Omega Gensynth project. The valley, nestled in the northwestern highlands, had proven more hospitable than anyone had expected. Soil tests revealed lower contamination levels than the ESC reports had claimed, and several plant species had naturally adapted to the altered conditions. Using traditional agricultural knowledge combined with selective modern techniques, they had established productive gardens and small farms across the valley floor. Dan approached, carrying a basket of harvested vegetables, real food grown in real soil, not the synthetic nutrients produced in the ESC's sterile laboratories. In the year since their escape, she had become the community's agricultural director, applying her knowledge of biological systems to more natural ends. The council meeting is about to start, she reminded him. Hong just returned from the border observation post. She has news from Sapabayo. Min nodded, taking a last look at the valley before following Dan down the path toward the settlement's central area. Small structures built from reclaimed materials and local resources housed the growing community. Children, including those born outside the ESC system, played in open areas under a sky that, while still not the clear blue of historical records, had noticeably improved even in the year they had been here. The community council gathered in the largest building, constructed around the frame of an ancient structure that had stood in the park long before the environmental collapse. Hong waited at the center of the gathered residents, her expression serious, but not grim. 3 more groups reached the perimeter extraction point last night, she announced when everyone had assembled. 67 people in total, including 14 children and several medical specialists. Murmurs of approval spread through the gathering. Each new arrival brought additional skills and knowledge to the community. What news from inside? Sang asked from his position among the council elders. Hong's expression grew more somber. The phase transition has proceeded, but not as planned. Approximately 30% of Sapabayo's population accepted voluntary gen-synth integration, mostly from the administrative and security sectors. Another 40% have organized into resistance groups controlling various sectors of the ESC. And the remainder, someone called from the crowd. Caught in between, Hong replied, trying to maintain normal operations while the 2 factions struggle for control. She paused. There's more. The Omega Gen Synth integrations have begun to exhibit unexpected complications. A syndrome they're calling autoimmune collapse. The enhanced immune systems turning against the host body's cells, particularly in the neural tissue. Min felt a complex mixture of emotions at this news. The failure of the GenSynth program might save countless humans from unwitting transformation, but it also meant suffering for those already integrated. What about the other ESCs? Dan asked. Are they experiencing similar divisions? From what we can gather through limited communications, yes, Hong confirmed. The information spread beyond Sapabayo, despite the authorities' efforts to contain it. Every ESC is now facing the same fundamental question. Continue on the path toward GenSynth integration or find another way forward. As the council meeting continued, discussing plans for accommodating the new arrivals and expanding the settlement's resources, Min slipped away. He made his way to a small clearing on the eastern edge of the community, a place he visited often when he needed to think. Here, he had planted a garden in his mother's memory. Traditional medicinal herbs grew alongside flowers she had described from her youth, before the world changed. At the center stood a young tree, its leaves stirring in the afternoon breeze. He had no way of knowing if his mother still lived within the divided ESC, but he had fulfilled his promise to plant something green beneath an open sky. From this vantage point, he could see both the settlement in the valley below and the distant outline of Sapabayo ESC on the horizon, past and future, artificial and natural, existing simultaneously in a world that defied simple categorization. A small bell rang from the community's central tower, the old-era bell they had recovered from ruins and restored as a symbol of connection to humanity's past. Its clear tone carried across the valley, calling people to the evening meal, a simple ritual that had taken on profound significance in their new life. Min took one last look at the distant ESC before turning toward the settlement. As he made his way down the path, he composed in his mind the words he would share with the community that evening, words he had been refining since their escape a year ago. We have not been replaced. We have only temporarily forgotten how to live. The future remains in human hands. In the failing light, the settlement's windows began to glow with warm illumination. Not the harsh blue efficiency lighting of the ESC, but the gentle orange of firelight and simple solar lamps. Imperfect, perhaps, limited in certain ways, but, undeniably, authentically human. And for now, in this small valley where life persisted against all odds, that was enough.